Captain Rebecca Whitman's voice crackled through the phone as she slammed it shut, her face tight with impatience. "There's a black kid in the pilot's lounge making trouble. Get down here now," she barked, storming toward the doorway. "He's not welcome." Marcus Wright froze where he sat, heart pounding. The 20-foot-long room felt suddenly smaller, its plush carpet and leather chairs turning into a trap. He raised the special guest ID pinned to his jacket, voice trembling. "Ma'am? I've got permission to be here. Ms. Reynolds in HR sent me." Whitman's eyes narrowed. "Permission? You think this is a playground?" She spat, cutting him off. She seized his badge so fast the strap snapped, the plastic landing on the carpet with a sharp crack. "Fake," she declared, holding it up like proof of some horrible crime. "Security now," she hissed into her radio. "He's a threat." The words stung Marcus worse than any slap. He tried to swallow back the lump in his throat. "I'm part of the Horizon Airline's career exploration program," he managed, voice rough. "I've waited 30 minutes. I haven't done anything wrong." Whitman didn't answer. She waved to the gathering pilots and staff watching from the hallway, her posture rigid with authority. "Everyone know how to spot a security risk?" she demanded, her tone dripping with contempt. "This kid is trespassing. He might be here to steal our secrets or sabotage our planes." Murmurs rose like a tide around him. Marcus felt a hot flush of shame and helpless anger. He scanned the doorway for Ms. Reynolds, or anyone who cared, but the crowd parted only to stare. 2 officers in dark uniforms arrived, their polished shoes clicking on the tile. "That's him," Whitman said without a flicker of doubt. "Take him out of here, search him top to bottom." One officer stepped forward, lifting his clipboard. "Young man, come with us," he said politely. Marcus's face went white. "Please, let me call my father," he stammered, fumbling for his phone. Whitman sneered. "Call who you want. I doubt your daddy can save you now. I'll make sure your parents lose their jobs over this," she added, voice cold as ice. The lounge fell silent. Marcus's chest tightened and tears blurred his vision. He dialed anyway. Ring after ring echoed, each one a drumbeat of dread. Memories of better times flooded his mind. The day his dad took him under a Boeing 777 at Dulles Airport, the smell of jet fuel mixing with birthday cake. He remembered standing under that massive wing, wide-eyed and hopeful. His father said then that with courage and persistence, he could fly anywhere. Now Marcus felt that hope flicker like a candle in a draft. The officers closed in. His palms were slick with sweat. "I'm telling you, I belong here," he whispered. But Whitman had already decided. She held her headset mic to her lips, announcing to the staff that this was a textbook security breach. Marcus sank onto the nearest chair, shoulders slumped, stunned by the cruelty raining down on him simply because of the color of his skin. He waited for his father's voice, praying it would cut through the storm of prejudice and set him free. The room Marcus Wright sat in looked more like a private aviation museum than a mere break area. He'd transformed his childhood bedroom into something similar, walls crowded with model airplanes and engine schematics. So it made sense that here, surrounded by polished wingtip fragments and framed flight logs, he'd felt at home. From his earliest years, he spent countless nights hunched over flight simulator software, learning to lift off, navigate storm cells, and set a Boeing 737 gently on a runway. His mother often begged him to get to bed, but his father, David Wright, always slipped into his room late at night, offering a quiet, "Keep flying, son," before tucking him in. Those long hours of virtual flight were the steps toward the dream Marcus chased. Even as he practiced, others whispered that a black kid didn't belong in the cockpit. Marcus remembered the sting of those doubts. Teachers who scoffed at his passion, neighbors who wondered why he even tried. At every setback, his father's hand on his shoulder steadied him. "Others may doubt you," David would say, "but never doubt yourself. And you belong in the sky. No one can ground you." When Horizon Airlines announced their Special Aviation Experience program, Marcus poured weeks into an essay about his love of flight. the FAA tour his father arranged on his 6th birthday, and his vision of becoming the first black captain at his airline. Opening the acceptance letter was a victory he and his father celebrated with tears. David beamed as Marcus read the words aloud. He'd beaten hundreds of applicants. That night they hugged, and Marcus felt invincible. But today, his first day in the pilot's lounge, Captain Whitman's cold accusation had turned celebration into shame. Every harsh word she uttered, every sneer, felt like she was carving away his dream, piece by piece, insisting that a white veteran's suspicion outweighed years of sacrifice. Now, 2 security officers in crisply pressed gray uniforms loomed over him. One shoved Marcus's shoulder, demanding, "How did you get in here?" The other rifled through his jacket pockets, eyes scanning every card, every photo. "Hand over your ID, son," the tall officer snapped. Marcus's voice trembled, but he held on to calm. "Ms. Reynolds in HR gave me that badge this morning," he said, producing the laminated card with shaking fingers. The straps snapped again under their grip, plastic splitting. "Fake," Whitman declared, her voice echoing like a verdict. A ring of onlookers tripped out their phones, pilots, staff, even a curious janitor, whispering and laughing under their breath. No one stepped forward to say he belonged. The worst part wasn't the physical intimidation, it was the complete, crushing isolation. Marcus pressed his back against the wall, heart pounding, every muscle ready to bolt. Tears stung his eyes, but he swallowed hard, reminding himself of his father's words. "Stand strong, stand proud." He reached for his phone, thumb hovering over his father's number. "Please, let me call my dad," he murmured, voice hoarse. Whitman snorted, "Go ahead. He can't fix this." The silence that followed felt eternal. Every cycle of the ring was a promise of rescue and a threat that nobody would answer. Then, with heat rising in his chest, Marcus remembered another lesson his father taught. When injustice hits, meet it head on. In one swift movement, he dropped to his knees, yanked the phone free from his pocket and held it aloft like a beacon. "Stop!" he cried, his voice surprisingly strong. "I am Marcus Wright, accepted into this program fair and square. You spread lies about me because of my skin color." He hit the live stream button and trained the camera on Whitman's smug face. Gasps rippled through the crowd as Marcus leapt to his feet and stepped onto a low table, ID badge held high beside his phone. "If you want proof, call HR right now," he challenged, voice ringing off the polished walls. "This is racism, plain and simple, and everyone watching will see it." Silence fell. The officers froze. Whitman's mouth snapped shut. Even the most skeptical pilots lowered their phones, uncertain now. Marcus's chest heaved, adrenaline and righteous anger coursing through him. "I built my dream on years of hard work," he continued, voice unwavering, "and I refuse to let you disgrace it because you're too blind to see me." His live stream already had dozens of viewers, employees outside the lounge who'd peeked in to see the commotion. Moments later, footsteps thundered in the hallway. Ms. Reynolds, alerted by the live stream notifications, burst through the door. She grabbed Whitman's arm, eyes blazing. "Captain, you've made a huge mistake," Reynolds said, voice trembling with indignation. "Marcus is here by my invitation. This badge is real. Now apologize." The power in Reynolds' tone was unmistakable. Whitman's face flushed, and for the first time her authority cracked. The officers gently stepped back from Marcus. Reynolds turned to him and mouthed, "I'm so sorry," before addressing the room. "We train these young people because they're our future. Racism has no place here." A few pilots shuffled awkwardly, lowering their heads in shame. Marcus climbed down from the table, bumping Reynolds' shoulder gratefully. His heart still pounded, but now with triumph instead of fear. He looked Whitman in the eye and said, "You crossed a line today. I won't forget it, and neither will everyone who saw this." With that, he turned off the live stream and tucked his phone into his pocket. The staff parted respectfully, letting him pass. As he walked out of the lounge, head held high, His father's voice rang in his ears. "You belong in the sky." Today, Marcus hadn't flown a plane, but he'd soared above prejudice and reclaimed his dream. And for the first time since he'd stepped into that room, he felt truly free. Marcus's heart pounded in his chest as he pressed the cracked phone to his ear. Every breath felt like sandpaper scraping his throat. When his father's deep, steady voice finally came through, Marcus's knees nearly buckled. "Marcus, stay calm," David Wright said. "I'm on my way. Don't leave that spot." Relief and terror washed over Marcus in equal measure. He blinked back tears, clutching the phone like a lifeline. If only his father could walk through that door right now and end this nightmare. Captain Whitman noticed Marcus's tears and her smirk widened. She folded her arms as if watching a well-rehearsed play. "So you had to call your daddy after all," she sneered. "I bet he's cleaning restrooms or stocking carts somewhere. Too bad he can't fix this little troublemaker." Her words burned through Marcus like acid. He stood rigid, jaw tight, remembering all the nights his father stayed up late teaching him about aerodynamics and flight safety. Now the man who had taught him never to doubt himself was being insulted, for Marcus's sake. The crowd of pilots and staff circled closer, their eyes sharp with curiosity and suspicion. Marcus felt every gaze as a jab against his dignity. He wanted to shout that his father was a respected FAA official, not a janitor, but every muscle in his body screamed to stay silent until his father arrived. One of the officers shifted, glancing at his radio, then at Whitman. The other officer's phone buzzed. He answered and nodded, face paling. They exchanged a look of uncertainty, as if they'd been handed new instructions. Marcus's pulse quickened. This hesitation could be his only hope. Whitman's posture stiffened. She glared at the officers. "What's going on? Are you going to finish this or not?" she demanded, her voice as cold as the polished steel winglet fragments lining the walls. The lead officer hesitated, then spoke in a low voice. "Captain, we just received confirmation from HR. Marcus Wright is a legitimate participant in the Special Aviation Experience program. His badge is real." A hush fell. Marcus felt his throat unclench and hope bloom like morning light breaking through storm clouds. Whitman's face flickered with surprise, then hardened into contempt. "That doesn't change what happened," she snapped. "He still trespassed. He still used a privilege he didn't earn." Her words meant to rally the crowd back to her side, but the officers exchanged another glance and shook their heads. The senior officer stepped between Whitman and Marcus. "Captain Whitman, we're done here. This young man is free to go." His tone brooked no argument. At that moment, footsteps pounded down the corridor. Marcus's heart flipped. His father burst through the door, tall and authoritative in his FA uniform, the embroidered wings glinting over his heart. He moved with purposeful strides, and Marcus felt his entire world snap back into place. David's steady gaze met Whitman's icy stare, and a hush fell over the room. "Captain Whitman," he said calmly but firmly, "I'd like to know why you treated my son like a criminal today." Whitman swallowed, blinking under David's unwavering gaze. She opened her mouth to protest, then closed it. Marcus stepped forward, voice quavering but resolute. "She called me a spy. She said Dad was a janitor. She threatened to ruin our careers." He looked to his father. "I didn't do anything wrong." David placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder, his grip warm and steady. He turned back to Whitman. "Your accusations were not only false, but they were rooted in prejudice. I demand an apology." The crowd watched in silence as Whitman's cheeks flushed. The pilots who had filmed the ordeal lowered their phones. Even her most loyal supporters averted their eyes. After a long moment, Captain Whitman's shoulders slumped. Her voice trembled as she looked at Marcus and then at David. "I'm sorry," she said, her pride crumbling. "I let my judgment cloud my duty. It won't happen again." Her apology sounded hollow in the electric silence. David nodded once, then turned to Marcus. "Son, are you all right?" His voice softened. Marcus's relief spilled over in a rush of tears. "I'm okay now," he whispered. "Thank you for coming." David wrapped him in a firm hug. The officers stepped back respectfully, and the pilots began to murmur among themselves, some offering Marcus rueful apologies, others shaking heads in shame. Marcus lifted his head and addressed the crowd, voice clear and strong. "I came here to learn about flying and safety. I was scared today, not by turbulence, but by the prejudice that tried to ground me. I won't let it stop me." The room broke into hesitant applause, which swelled into genuine support. As they left the lounge, father and son walked side by side, Marcus's arm around David's waist. He felt lighter than he had in hours, as if he'd shed 1,000 pounds of doubt. At the door, Marcus stopped and looked back. The pilots and staff stood quietly, some nodding in respect. No more sneers, no more whispers. Today, Marcus hadn't just defended his right to sit in a lounge, he'd reclaimed his dignity and stood up to hatred. Out in the terminal, Marcus drew in a deep breath of cool air scented with coffee and jet fuel. He pictured the runway outside, the open sky, and the endless possibilities beyond the airport gates. With his father at his side, Marcus knew no barrier, no prejudice could keep him earthbound. His dream of flying free and high was intact, stronger and more determined than ever. And as they walked toward the baggage claim, Marcus lifted his chin and smiled, ready to face whatever came next with courage, pride, and the knowledge that he truly belonged in the sky. Just when Marcus felt every ounce of hope draining away, the crackle of a walkie-talkie shattered the tension. A firm voice announced that a VIP party was entering the pilot's lounge. Whitman's smile faltered. She leaned toward the officers and hissed, "Take him out of here now!" But they shook their heads, eyes apologetic. The polished doors swung open, and in strode David Wright, administrator of the FAA, flanked by his senior staff. The room froze. Marcus's heart thundered. This was the man who had taught him to reach for the sky, now here to defend him. David moved straight to Marcus, placing a steadying hand on his son's shoulder. His voice was warm but carried the weight of authority. "Marcus, are you all right? I'm here now." Marcus nodded, tears slipping free. Then David turned to Whitman. His gaze was calm steel. "Captain Whitman," he said, "why did you accuse my son of being a threat and claim his badge as counterfeit?" Whitman gulped, her perfect composure unraveling. She stammered an apology, but David cut her off. "You had no evidence," he continued, voice ringing through the silent room. "A 16-year-old student in an approved aviation program is not an industrial spy. You humiliated him based on your bias." His words were precise, each one a blow to her arrogance. The officers and pilots exchanged ashamed glances. Even Whitman's most vocal supporters lowered their heads. Marcus felt a swell of pride as his father defended his honor in front of everyone who had watched him suffer. Then David addressed the security team. "Your duty is to protect, not to indulge prejudice. You owe my son an apology." One officer stepped forward, voice trembling. "We're sorry, Marcus. We made a mistake." The other nodded, eyes wet. Marcus simply nodded back, remembering his father's lesson that forgiveness shows true strength. Whitman stood aside, shoulders slumped, her reputation in ruins after 2 decades of unchallenged authority. The lounge felt smaller, the walls closing in around her shame. As the crowd dispersed, Marcus stood by his father's side, heart steady now, mind clear. He swallowed the last of his fear and spoke softly but firmly. "I came here to learn about flying, not to be judged by my skin. I won't let this stop me." David placed an arm around him. Together they walked out of the lounge, Marcus feeling lighter than ever. Every step a promise that no prejudice could ever ground him again. Marcus felt the weight of every accusing eye in the room as Captain Whitman's hurried apology rang hollow. "Mr. Wright's badge is real," David Wright began, stepping forward until Whitman instinctively backed away. His voice carried authority like a thunderclap. You followed security procedures, did you? Or did you leap to conclusions because of your bias? The room held its breath. Whitman's cheeks burned as she stammered that she hadn't known Marcus was his son. Her careless admission cut deeper than any accusation. David's gaze leveled on her. Not knowing he was my son only proves your prejudice, Captain Whitman. You judged a 16-year-old based on appearance, not facts. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the pilots and staff. Marcus's heart clenched with both pity and pride. He remembered how his father taught him that integrity means standing up for truth, even when it's hard. Now his father was demanding justice on his behalf and on behalf of everyone who'd ever been marginalized. A senior FAA official tapped his tablet and connected it to the screen. The lounge TV flickered to life, showing clear footage of Tanya Reynolds escorting Marcus in, handing him the special access card and pointing out the pilot's break area. The video showed Marcus sitting quietly, headphones on, riveted by the aviation documentary. Every frame confirmed his innocence. When Whitman stormed in and yanked his badge, the video froze on her scornful face. Gasps echoed as the evidence laid bare her baseless cruelty. Then the FAA agent revealed her record. 3 filed complaints in the past 3 years documenting similar acts of discriminatory suspicion toward crew and passengers of color. The room erupted into whispers of shock and disappointment. Whitman's head dropped, her voice choked by shame. The same staff who once saluted her now averted their eyes. Marcus's chest swelled. This was the reckoning he'd dreamed of, the moment when prejudice finally collided with accountability. David Wright turned to the gathered officers and airline leadership. His voice was calm steel. I hereby suspend Captain Whitman from all flight duties effective immediately. We will open a full investigation into her conduct and decision-making. 2 security officers approached and, with solemn respect, escorted Whitman from the room. Her steps were heavy, her uniform rattling like empty armor. No colleague offered comfort. The lounge remained silent except for the soft echo of her departure, a testament to justice served. Marcus stood beside his father, feeling tears prick his eyes, not of fear now, but of catharsis. He understood that real power lies not in rank, but in fairness and courage. He looked at Whitman's empty spot, heart softened with compassion for her broken pride, yet certain he would never allow anyone to steal his dignity again. Turning to the crowd, Marcus spoke softly. Today, I learned that standing up for yourself can change hearts and minds. Thank you all for seeing the truth. As applause rippled through the room, he walked out with his father at his side, stepping into a future where prejudice met its match in justice. Marcus Wright stood beside his father as the senior FAA officials and Horizon Airlines leaders nodded solemnly at David Wright's instructions. The room still hummed with the tension of what had just happened, but Marcus felt a steady warmth in his chest. He remembered every cruel word Captain Whitman had thrown at him, and how alone he'd felt. Now, with his father's unwavering support and a clear commitment to fairness, that loneliness was gone. David Wright turned to Marcus, his stern gaze softening as he placed a reassuring hand on his son's shoulder. "Marcus, I am so proud of how you handled yourself," he said in a warm, steady voice. Marcus nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. His father's pride mattered more to him than anything. He felt a rush of gratitude for the man who always taught him to stand tall, no matter how strong the wind. The room fell silent as the FAA's chief counsel stepped forward. He spoke with crisp authority. "We will conduct a full, transparent investigation into today's events. We will examine every procedure, review every training module, and ensure prejudice never has a foothold here again." The officials exchanged determined looks. Marcus's heart swelled with hope. Today's scandal wasn't just about him. It would become the spark that lit a blaze of change across aviation. When the council finished, David Wright guided Marcus toward the open lounge door. They were halfway out when a confident voice called their names. Marcus turned and saw Captain Amara Johnson striding toward them with a warm smile. She was a veteran pilot, her dark uniform impeccably pressed, her wings gleaming above her heart. Marcus had watched her deliver safety briefings on the tarmac when he was little, awed by her poise and skill. "Marcus, I'm Captain Amara Johnson," she said, extending her hand. "I'm sorry you had to go through that, but I want you to know the sky belongs to people like you, brave, talented, and relentless. Would you like to see the cockpit of the Boeing 787 I'm flying this afternoon?" Marcus's eyes lit up. His father gave a gentle nod, and Marcus found his voice. "Yes, ma'am, I'd be honored." Captain Johnson led them down the polished corridor, her presence radiating encouragement. Along the way, pilots and staff offered Marcus respectful nods and quiet apologies. He realized that justice wasn't just about punishing the guilty. It was also about healing the wounded. The tension in the air eased with every step, replaced by a growing sense of community. When they reached the cockpit door, Captain Johnson paused and turned to Marcus. "I know how it feels to face doubt," she said softly. "When I first started, people said a black woman didn't belong at the controls, but I proved them wrong by flying safely, by knowing every switch and gauge, by never letting fear ground me." She placed her hand on the cool metal of the cockpit door. "This is where you belong." Marcus smiled, his heart pounding with excitement. He stepped inside, eyes wide as the array of instruments came into view. The yoke, the throttle, the myriad switches, each one represented a challenge conquered, a level of trust earned. Captain Johnson walked him through the controls, her voice patient and kind. She let Marcus handle the yoke, just to feel the weight of possibility in his hands. As he turned a dial, she said, "That's the compass adjustment. You see how a small tweak can change your course? Life is like that too. One choice can set you on a new heading." Marcus nodded, thinking of today's ordeal. He thought of Captain Whitman's cruelty, the whispering crowd, the sickening shame. Then he thought of his father's words, the FAA's swift justice, Captain Johnson's kindness. He realized that his life's course had shifted today. He would not just aim for the sky, he would help open it for others. Weeks passed, and the story of Marcus Wright's brave stand spread beyond Horizon Airlines. Schools invited him to speak. Community centers asked him to share how he overcame prejudice. He told his story simply, about the day he was branded a threat, the moment his father rescued his dignity, and the power of speaking truth to authority. Each time, he ended with the same message: don't let anyone tell you where you belong. Show them by living your truth. The applause he received wasn't for him. It was for the promise of fairness he represented. Meanwhile, David Wright set in motion an ambitious plan at the FAA. He announced a nationwide program to recruit and train youth from every background for careers in aviation. The initiative included scholarships, simulator labs in underserved communities, and mentorships with pilots like Captain Johnson. He made it clear, we need every voice, every dream, every talent. Safety depends on diversity. The FAA and Horizon Airlines rolled out mandatory bias awareness training. Pilots and staff watched videos of Marcus's experience and participated in workshops on empathy and equity. Airports began posting visible pledges. We welcome all passengers and crew. Within months, flight crews, ground staff, and passengers noticed a shift. Stories of kindness and inclusion became as common as tales of turbulence. Back at home, Marcus found himself overwhelmed by invitations and interviews. He became the face of the FAA's youth outreach, traveling to state capitals in a chartered jet, often in the cockpit beside Captain Johnson. He wore a crisp uniform and spoke to legislators about expanding flight training centers. He spoke at town halls, at church gatherings, at veterans meetings, always emphasizing that prejudice is a runway pit. If you hit it at speed, you crash, but with collective vigilance and open hearts, the runway stays clear for everyone. As the months turned to a year, Marcus stood on a stage inside the FAA headquarters, the enormous American flag hanging behind him. His father watched from the front row, his eyes shining with pride. Marcus took the microphone. He spoke of that fateful day, of fear and injustice, of truth and justice. He spoke of Captain Whitman's downfall, a cautionary tale, and of the many whirring simulators now buzzing with eager faces. He spoke of Captain Johnson's compassion and of the hundreds of young pilots she'd inspired. And now, Marcus concluded, voice steady and sure, we look to the horizon not as a boundary, but as a promise. Each of us belongs in the sky if we have the courage to claim our space. Let's keep our flight paths clear of prejudice so that every dream can take off. The audience rose in applause. Marcus's heart soared higher than any jetliner. He had turned despair into determination, hatred into hope. And as he left the stage, shoulder to shoulder with his father and Captain Johnson, he knew this chapter was only the beginning. The sky was wide and welcoming, and countless others would follow his flight path to reclaim dreams and justice served. Marcus Wright looked straight into the camera, his voice warm but firm. I've walked through fear and seen how quickly prejudice can strip away someone's dignity. But today I stand here with my head held high, proof that justice can and will prevail when we refuse to back down. He paused, eyes shining with emotion. If you've ever been judged by the color of your skin or made to feel you didn't belong, I want you to know you're not alone. Your story matters just as much as mine. Share what you've been through. Speak out about the times you faced unfairness and the moments you found the strength to rise above it. Marcus offered a gentle smile. When you tell your truth, you give hope to others who might still be silenced by fear. Together, we can build a world where no one has to doubt their worth, where every young person can chase their dreams without worrying about someone else's bias standing in their way. He leaned forward, as if confiding in a friend. If this video touched your heart, leave a like and share it with someone who needs to hear that they belong. Subscribe for more real-life stories of courage and change, and let's turn every comment section into a space of solidarity and support. Marcus straightened, ready to move on to the next chapter. Thank you for listening and for being part of this journey. When we stand together, prejudice loses its power and hope takes flight. I'll see you soon, stronger and more determined than ever.